Good evening, and welcome to our show, Brookfield Public Advocate. I'm your host, Bruce Sennick. For tonight's show, we continue our political series, Meet the Candidates. Tonight's guest is Kai Westby, candidate for the Republican nomination for the United States Senate from Connecticut. Kai, thanks for coming, and welcome to our show.
Nice to be here, Bruce.
Please tell our audience a little bit about yourself.
I grew up in Thomaston, Connecticut. I went to Thomaston High School, and then I went to Wesleyan University in Middletown. And before going to law school, I enlisted in the Marine Corps and stayed in the Marine Corps Reserves for 24 years. I'm a practicing attorney in Thomaston. I live in Southbury with my wife, Laura. My wife is a minister at the First Congregational Church of Bethel. And I have two daughters, Sarah, who works in New York, and Rachel, who's going to be graduating from college this weekend.
Okay, so the college debt thing maybe won't be too bad then.
I'm seeing light at the end of the tunnel.
Kai, would you please tell our viewers why you've decided to run for the United States Senate?
Bruce, I firmly believe that our country is going down the wrong track. We're headed down the wrong path, and the incumbent politicians have their foot on the accelerator and they're ready to drive us off a cliff, and the only ones with golden parachutes are those incumbent politicians.
That does seem to be true. Have you ever run for or held political office before?
I've held all kinds of offices for the last 30 years. In the Marine Corps as an officer, I was a second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain, and major. I've served on the Board of Education, Planning and Zoning Commission. I've been on the RTCs of 2 different towns. I've been president of many organizations, and I'm currently on the State Central Committee of the Connecticut Republicans.
The Republican, okay. What qualities, your background sounds great. What qualities do you bring to the table?
My father and mother were both small business owners, and one of the things I learned was the importance of hard work and to be thrifty. When I grew up, last night's leftovers became today's casserole, and my parents were always living by the motto, a penny saved is a penny earned, and waste not, want not. So I'm a very thrifty person, and I understand that to hold elective office, you have a fiduciary duty to the taxpayers and the citizens to manage the government's money wisely. Just like you as a financial planner have a fiduciary duty to your clients, I feel elected officials have a fiduciary duty to the citizens to manage the government's resources wisely and not waste money.
That's an interesting term because to me it's almost the antithesis of what's going on.
Exactly.
Now, frankly, you are somewhat unknown. What qualities do you feel that you have that put you head and shoulders above the others? In other words, what differentiates you when you can talk about either fellow Republicans or Democrats?
Well, one of the nice things about the internet is that you can become known fairly quickly. I think thousands and thousands of people are getting to know me now. What separates me is a background of a strong belief in the Constitution, fiscal responsibility, constitutional conservatism, and this is one thing about me, Bruce. I am not going to waste money. I am not going to be an outrageous spender of money like Linda McMahon and Chris Shays and Chris Murphy, who have had a track record of outrageous spending. I'm going to be a very thrifty and frugal person.
Now, do you have a particular, you've mentioned a few things, but is there a particular philosophy that you feel, appropriate for the office that you're seeking?
I have my philosophy of government, and the role of a senator is based on 3 core principles, and that is that the free enterprise system is the greatest engine ever devised for growth and opportunity and jobs. I believe in the Constitution as the supreme law of the land and as a blueprint for good, effective, limited government. And as a former Marine, I believe that our national defense has to be second to none, and I subscribe to what Ronald Reagan said, that peace can only be achieved through strength, and it can only be maintained through strength. So those are my core principles.
I think everyone, regardless of where a person falls politically, will feel about the extreme we'll talk about the extreme partisanship in Washington. And at least in my lifetime, it seems to have gotten worse each and every term when the United States public keeps sending the same people back, it seems. How would you be able to work with the other side of the aisle? What do you feel how would you do that?
I can work with anyone who pledges to abide by the Constitution and fulfill their constitutional oath of office. If someone does that, I can certainly work with them. I feel my personality is such I can build consensus with people. Ronald Reagan was a good example of someone who could build consensus for his platform and his principles because he convinced people, he persuaded people that he was taking the country down the right path. And that's the essence of leadership.
Now, we don't only have a 28-minute show, but I'm going to ask, what do you feel are the three most important problems that Washington has to, and I emphasize has to, deal with?
They are excessive spending, excessive taxation, and excessive borrowing. And all of those, Bruce, are tied in together with the principle that our government should be a limited government, and what we have now under this administration and with the current incumbents is unlimited government. Government has extended far beyond its proper scope and purpose, and that is what's leading us off the cliff.
Now, this is maybe a question that a lot of people are a little reticent to answer, but are there some areas that you feel you may differ from some of your fellow Republicans?
Well, I think so. I don't think I would be, as I said before, I'm an extremely thrifty and frugal person. I would differ substantially from Linda McMahon, who was an outrageous spender, and from Chris Shays, whose record in Congress was as a big spender, a tax and spend liberal under the guise of a Republican. So that's how I would separate myself from Mrs. McMahon and Mr. Shays, is that I'm an extremely thrifty person and they're big spenders.
But more to the point, though, of actual Republicans in office currently, are there some issues that that you feel you may differ from?
I consider myself a fiscal conservative, social conservative, constitutional conservative. I follow what the Republican senators are doing. There are two senators that I like, Tom Coburn and Jim DeMint are two senators I would probably align with most of the time on the issues.
Kind of model yourself a lot after their positions. Okay, as I said a few minutes ago, we only have 28 minutes, but I feel we have to talk about Obamacare.
Yes, sir.
Are there any parts I have my own feelings, being in the insurance industry for going on 4 decades at this point, but
I would have only said 2, Bruce.
Well, I started when I was 10.
Yeah, okay.
Are there any parts that you would keep?
Any government legislation that takes over a private industry should be canceled. So to answer your question, Obamacare should be repealed.
The whole
kit and caboodle. I don't think we should try to monkey around with it and take out and insert. I think the entire legislation has to be repealed, and so much of health care needs to be delegated to the states. It's not really, in my opinion, the proper constitutional purpose of our federal government to be in the health care business.
Yeah. Well, we may see before election time an important ruling from the Supreme Court.
Yes, absolutely.
One way or the other on that. Are there some pledges if you were to be successful as the nominee and then go on to win, become our U.S. Senator? Are there some pledges that you'd like to make?
I pledge to abide by my oath of office to protect and defend the Constitution of the United States. I pledge to be a thrifty and frugal senator who doesn't waste money. I pledge to reduce taxes, not increase them, to reduce taxes, and I will work like the Dickens to repeal the death tax. In my opinion, the death tax is morally wrong, it's unconscionable. It's unconscionable for the federal government to take money away from people who have all their lives worked so hard and paid taxes, have worked so hard to save, to be able to pass on to their children and their grandchildren. Under those circumstances, it's morally wrong for the government to take money from the decedent's estate.
So I guess what you're saying is you disagree with Warren Buffett.
I do. I do, on many issues, actually.